On the morning of August 17, 1943, General Adolf Galland stood on the railway platform at Rinton Heath, East Prussia, observing Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring board his luxurious train after a tense conference on Luftwaffe fighter operations, acutely aware that the intelligence he carried would be dismissed with catastrophic consequences. Earlier that same morning, Luftwaffe units had scrambled to intercept an American bomber raid targeting Regensburg and Schweinfurt, a mission that should have followed predictable patterns. Escort fighters would turn back when fuel ran low, leaving the bombers exposed, and German fighters would engage, inflicting losses before the Americans retreated. Yet something unprecedented had occurred. Reports arrived from multiple squadrons across Germany that Lockheed P-38 Lightnings, equipped with drop tanks extending their range far beyond any known operational limit, were engaging Luftwaffe fighters over 150 miles inside German airspace. Galland, having meticulously collected these reports, understood immediately that the Luftwaffe's tactical doctrine, waiting for escorts to turn back before attacking bombers, was obsolete. With urgency, he approached Göring on the platform, presenting his findings, explaining the mechanics of the drop tank system, and emphasizing that these were fully combat-capable American fighters operating far deeper in the Reich than any doctrine allowed. Göring's reaction was one of incredulity and denial. He declared the reports impossible, attributing the sightings to damaged aircraft gliding east after being hit over France or Belgium, and issued a direct order forbidding further mention of the threat. Galland, aware that orders were orders but profoundly conscious of the implications, watched the train depart, knowing that the Luftwaffe was about to face a threat it was unprepared to counter. That very day, during the Regensburg-Schweinfurt raids, German fighters paid a steep price. Approximately 25 to 27 were lost, many to the long-range P-38s that Göring had insisted could not reach central Germany. These losses marked the beginning of a relentless deterioration of Germany's fighter capability, as the assumption that American escorts would turn back predictably was shattered, forcing commanders to confront a new reality. American fighters could appear anywhere, at any time, deep in German territory. Over the following weeks and months, Galland's warnings proved tragically prescient. On September 6, 1943, a Stuttgart raid with P-38 escorts demonstrated the danger clearly. Major Egon Mayer, one of Germany's most accomplished bomber-destroyers, with 57 kills, led a head-on attack on American B-17s as per tactical doctrine, but his squadron was intercepted by P-38s waiting above the formation, resulting in 3 German fighters lost immediately and 5 pilots either killed or captured, including members of Mayer's own unit. By October, during the infamous Black Thursday Schweinfurt raid, the Luftwaffe suffered catastrophic losses. 38 fighters destroyed, 42 pilots killed or wounded, despite achieving their highest bomber kill count of the war, highlighting the grim shift in the exchange ratio. Previously, 3 or 4 bombers were destroyed for every fighter lost, now approaching parity, signaling that the Luftwaffe would be ground down before it could inflict strategic damage. Experienced aces like Hedman Wilhelm Leah of Jagdgeschwader 3, with 131 confirmed kills, were being killed in engagements with P-47 Thunderbolts, eroding the Luftwaffe's most valuable resource. Seasoned pilots capable of training novices and leading effective operations. Galland meticulously documented losses from June through October 1943, showing an accelerating trend. 87 fighters lost in June, 106 in July, 174 in August, 193 in September, 224 in October, with the proportion of experienced pilots dropping from 60% to 40%, and warned that without intervention, the force would reach a critical breaking point within 6 months. A warning ignored by Göring and the Air Ministry. The situation grew more dire with the introduction of the North American P-51 Mustang in December 1943, which, equipped with the Merlin engine and drop tanks, could escort bombers to any German industrial target and engage Luftwaffe fighters at high altitude with superior speed, maneuverability, and range. Galland briefed Göring on the P-51's capabilities and recommended emergency measures: accelerated fighter production, urgent deployment of the MiG-262 Chatur-2 jet fighter, expanded pilot training despite fuel shortages, and tactical innovation to counter long-range escorts. Once again, his warnings were dismissed. Göring insisted the Luftwaffe would prevail through pilot skill and superior tactics. The strategic reality, however, was starkly different. By early 1944, American and British forces achieved near total control of the air, with pilots trained for 400–500 hours compared to inexperienced German novices with less than 200. Attrition rates skyrocketed. By April, over 1,000 German pilots had been killed, wounded, or captured in just 4 months, while entire squadrons were decimated in repeated engagements, including Operation Argument, Big Week, where the Luftwaffe lost 262 fighters destroyed, 180 more damaged, and experienced aces killed at rates that made replacement impossible. Fuel shortages, lack of spare parts, and Allied attacks on training facilities compounded the problem, sending barely competent pilots into combat against superior opposition. Galland attempted to innovate tactics personally, leading unauthorized missions to understand what pilots faced, but even his expertise could not counter the overwhelming numerical and technological advantage of Allied air power. Aggressive maneuvers, head-on attacks, and attempts to anticipate escort movements could mitigate losses only slightly, and the best German pilots were killed at alarming rates, taking with them years of accumulated tactical knowledge. By autumn 1944, the Luftwaffe existed primarily on paper. Squadrons had aircraft and nominal personnel, but fuel shortages grounded entire units. Inexperienced pilots crashed during training, and missions faced overwhelming numbers of Allied bombers and escorts. In November 1944, during an oil plant raid, 500 German fighters faced 975 American bombers, escorted by 800 fighters, losing 98 aircraft and 78 pilots, with minimal impact on the attackers. The system was collapsing. Hitler and Göring redirected remaining fighter units to support ground offensives, effectively sealing the Luftwaffe's fate as an air defense force. Galland was relieved in January 1945 following the fighter pilots' revolt, accused of undermining morale, though his warnings had been prescient. He was placed under house arrest, but later allowed to form Jagdverband 44, an elite jet fighter unit equipped with MiG-262 aircraft, manned by Germany's remaining top aces, including Johannes Steinhoff, Gerd Barkhorn, and others. The MiG-262, capable of 540 meters range, armed with devastating 30mm cannons, and able to choose engagement and disengagement, offered tactical superiority over Allied fighters, yet could not change the strategic reality. Fuel shortages, overwhelming Allied numbers, and destruction of infrastructure limited the unit's operational impact. Galland flew his first combat mission in the MiG-262 on March 31, 1945, shooting down a B-26 Marauder, but by April, the Luftwaffe was unable to sustain effective operations. His final combat sortie on April 26, 1945, ended with him barely, escaping a P-47 attack, sustaining injuries, and grounding him permanently. 8 days later, Germany surrendered. Adolf Galland survived the war, captured by Allied forces, later serving as a military advisor in Argentina, before returning to Germany as an aerospace consultant. He chronicled his experiences in his autobiography, emphasizing that the turning point of the air war occurred in August 1943, when he tried to warn Göring of long-range American fighters penetrating deep into the Reich. Denied recognition, ignored and overruled by leadership unwilling to face reality, Galland's experience illustrates the catastrophic consequences of command failure, not through incompetence, but through denial, refusal to adapt, and punishing those who presented uncomfortable truths. Thousands of German pilots died in combat against enemies that Galland had predicted would appear far beyond the Reich's borders, and the Luftwaffe never recovered from the combined effect of attrition, training collapse, fuel shortages, and overwhelming Allied air superiority. His story, and the intelligence he presented, serve as a stark reminder that leadership decisions, particularly the refusal to acknowledge evolving threats, can shape the course of history and seal the fate of entire military forces.